welcome to another video. Last time we left off with making the Constitution, talking about the making of the Constitution from the Articles of Confederation and how kind of all that came along. And definitely looking at some very nice pictures like usual. But now, we are on to the Federalist period, Washington and Adams. President Washington was an inevitable choice. He was the only president chosen unanimously by the Electoral College and the only one who did not claim the allegiance of any party. It is true that almost from the first party divisions appeared. Whoops. It is true that almost from the first party divisions appeared. That's really worded weird. But Washington took care to include the leaders of both factions in his cabinet. He made Jefferson his Secretary of State and Hamilton his Secretary of the Treasury. It was very fortunate that the country had the service of this large-minded patriot as its first president, since he gave to the office the traditions of dignity and civic rectitude. Among the founding fathers, some were more brilliant. The financier Hamilton, the liberal reformer Jefferson, the chief architect of the Constitution Madison, the learned jurist John Marshall, and the aged patriarch Franklin. But had any of these been chosen, partisanship would have begun immediately. Not even Washington could stave it off indefinitely. The French Revolution of 1789 to 99 provoked a keen partisanship in foreign policy. France, unlike the United States, had a burden of feudal privilege to cast off. As the principal state of continental Europe, her revolution was bound to create repercussions elsewhere. From 1792 to 1815, there was an overlapping succession of European wars, centering on France. Some Americans wanted the United States to aid France, the friend and ally of the Revolution. Others still had a lingering sympathy for Britain, the mother country, and moreover were horrified at the excesses of the French reign of terror. The first presidents, Washington and John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, all desired to keep the United States neutral, fearing the effects of another war on a country which had so recently experienced the strain of the Revolution. A treaty with England negotiated by John Jay was widely unpopular. It was felt to be to the advantage of the British. Although Washington was elected for a second term without opposition, criticism of his administration began to appear in the press. Jefferson eventually left the cabinet. Even though Washington did not belong to the Federalist Party, the conservative party of Hamilton, they claimed him. Washington, whose chief fault was his sensitivity, complained that he had been abused worse than a pickpocket. He refused a third term, and thus started a precedent never successfully broken until Franklin Roosevelt's third term in 1940. John Adams of Massachusetts was an avowed Federalist. During his term of office, extreme partisanship pushed through Congress the Alien and Sedition laws. These gave arbitrary powers to the government to deport aliens and prosecute critics of the government for sedition. Jefferson and Madison replied with resolutions in the Virginia and Kentucky legislature denying the validity of laws so unconstitutional, and called on the states to resist them. Their aim to vindicate freedom was admirable, but unfortunately, the attempt to make the states judges of the constitutionality of national law created a dangerous precedent. Yet Adams, though his sympathies were more British than French, resisted Federalist pressure to take advantage of a blunder of the French, who demanded bribes to renew diplomatic relations with the United States. The country resounded with the cry, "Millions for defense, but not 1 cent for tribute." But the president resumed negotiations when France offered more reasonable terms, and war was averted. This incident is known as the XYZ affair, from the initials hiding the identity of the greedy French negotiators. Adams, an honest and able man, had few of the qualities of the successful politician. He was tactless and quarrelsome, but he was the progenitor of the most remarkable political family in American history. The family includes a future president, John Quincy Adams, and many diplomats, historians, and political reformers. As a group, they were ruggedly honest, independent of party regularity, able, scholarly, tactless, unpopular, and devoted to their country. Remarkable men, rhymed the poet Stephen Vincent Benet, with the tart Adams quick and the same Adams talent for doing good work. Let's see if I can. Are there any more? Nope. Okay, that's it for this little section. Yeah, obviously the first two presidents really define the nation in different ways. Um, Washington very astutely could see how the winds were blowing. Um, he really didn't think a party system was good. Washington actually hated the idea of the party system because things could become too partisan. And look at that, he was right. It didn't even take that long for him to be right. Um, and he very much detested being claimed by either side. And so, like they said, when he's claimed by the Federalists, he hates it. And he actually leaves because he's more upset than anything. Washington has a temper. People forget about that because obviously it's not really talked about as much, but Washington is well known for having a temper. Um, and I would say the words that he used there, where he said he felt abused more than a pickpocket, um, I'm going to be honest, he probably had some more choice words for people behind closed doors that we'll never know. But let's just say it was very likely. Um, and he really does lead us to, he tries to lead to a good spot, but like I said, Washington just, he couldn't do everything. He tried, but more more men had other ideas. Let's just go with that. And Adams is a very interesting case because we look back at him and he did, the Alien Sedition Act, not usually very looked on very fondly, of course. Um, and I mean, for good reason. It kind of removes some of the Bill of Rights protections, but it's been kind of argued. Let's just go with that. It's been argued here and there, so that's a whole other thing. But um, Adams was a good potential president. He had a lot of the right qualities. Adams is very sticks to his own guns and will stick to his morals that he believes and his guiding principles. He's a very principled man. For instance, Adams, a very staunch independent, wants independence for his nation, things like that, before the revolution. He's the lawyer of the soldiers for the Boston Massacre. He's the one that defends them, and he doesn't agree that the nation should be under British yoke anymore and all this stuff, but he still defends them because it was the right thing to do. It's what he should have done, and he proved that these guys didn't really do anything that bad. Like it wasn't necessarily their fault. For instance, that's what I should say. Not anything bad. They still kill people, but it wasn't necessarily their fault. And he gets most of them off scot free because, I mean, realistically, they should have been most of them should have been gotten off scot free. Um, So very principled guy, and yeah, his family has a lot of very well-known people. Samuel Adams, another person from about this time. But yeah, John Quincy Adams, future president, and yeah, many diplomats and historians and things like that are come from the Adams family. They are a very an important American family, um, even today. But now we'll get into the picture. Look at this one here. Below, many Americans were upset with John Jay's treaty with England. Dissidents burned him in effigy in 1894. Well, it's a little late for that now. 1894, John Jay is long gone. Just gonna say, I wonder if they meant 1794, but hey, maybe not. Maybe this just became a tradition. At the bottom, there was no doubt that President Washington was one of the most popular American heroes of the time. Okay, I don't know how that really shows that, but yeah, sure, let's go with that. Um, but yes, Washington was very famous. Like when he first becomes president, they basically beg him to. They say, "Please become president." He didn't really want to. He wanted to go to Mount Vernon, like he always did, and just live at home. But that's not what happens. So, at the top here, President Washington is shown with his cabinet. Yeah, look at his cabinet. Look at just like the crazy amount of important people that were here. Crazy, crazy, crazy. And at the bottom here, Washington reviewing the Western Army at Fort Cumberland. Uh, yeah, Fort Cumberland. Yeah, I mean he's still a military guy, commander in chief. That's why all that comes from Washington. Like most things in the presidency come from Washington. At the top here, a lithograph published the 1st of October 1800, showing the American merchant ship Planter, this one right here, beating off a French privateer carrying 22 guns. The engagement occurred the 10th of July, 1799. Yeah, this is something that's not really talked about. The French in America, so quickly after the Revolution, really, um, have a kind of a falling out, mostly because of the French Revolution, which a lot of those people in the French Revolution didn't really necessarily have um, the best uh, the best idea for foreign relations. Let's just go with that. And honestly, one of the reasons that a lot of the French and American relations kind of get fixed kind of comes from Napoleon, just realistically. Napoleon knows he needs at least some kind of friends somewhere. So, you know, why not America, right? At the bottom here is the second president of the United States, John Adams. There's John Adams. Probably one of his more famous portraits. Very, very intelligent guy. Very, very intelligent. At the top here is the cartoon. This cartoon is a critique test, five heads, or the Paris Monster. He is asking the Americans for more money, and they refuse to give it to him. The drawing illustrates the anti-French feeling in the United States following the XYZ affair. Yeah, you can see a lot of these Americans are like, no, we're not gonna pay you. But yeah, this hat is very popular for the French Revolution, and you can see how many people saw the terror right here. Chopping heads off, things like that. People didn't necessarily have the highest opinion of the French. Um, that's why the Alien Sedition Acts get started, which is so weird to think about because it's like, yeah, we were once pretty close with France, like very quickly, and then it was very quickly like, no, no, we hate each other. Obviously, it wasn't the same people in charge at that point, but still, kind of crazy to think. At the right here, is Bonaparte in trouble. Napoleon is being attacked by the Russian bear and the British lion. And there's the Russian bear, and there's the British lion. Nagging at his heels, the bear going for the throat. Really makes a lot of sense when you think about Napoleon. Um, yeah, obviously this is when America has a little bit of a more favorable position of France. Um, during Thomas Jefferson as president, um, which he's very pro-France. He likes France, but he didn't like the terror. That's very common. A lot of people didn't like the terror. At first, when the revolution started, a lot of Americans thought, "Hey, we should get involved." But then quickly, we're like, "No, actually, no, we don't. No, we don't want anyone to think. We don't want anything to do with that. That's a whole big no-no." Um, very quickly. So, but once the revolution kind of calms down and Napoleon takes over, favorable opinions kind of rise again. Napoleon's a lot more favorable to America as well. So, you know. But that's going to do it for this video. If you guys liked the video, leave a like. If you have any ways to improve these videos, leave a comment down below. I always appreciate your feedback. And as always, subscribe. It really does help out the channel. Thank you.